Welcome to assessing and optimizing a SQL Server at the enterprise level. And my name is Ben DeBow, and I also have Angela Henry here as well. So a little bit about myself. I've been in the industry for the last 25 years. I've seen a lot of different things, and my experience is working with a lot of enterprises on optimizing, scaling, and designing a lot of the initial private clouds for SQL Server in the world. And through those experiences, I've been able to see a lot of different things that work and also do not work. I actually wrote a book over COVID. A lot of us had time on our hands, so I wrote a book. And a lot of the things around what I've seen, what I've learned, as well as what I think is coming, is in this speech today, but also in the book. And we're going to be giving away 2 copies to the best questions today. So make sure we interact because it'll be great to hear what you guys want to know. I also have Angela Henry here.
Hi, I'm Angela. I work for Ben. I am also a Microsoft MVP. All of my contact information is on there. I am also a helper here at BITS. I'm not in orange this morning because I'm up here speaking, but I will be in orange later on today. And a huge round of applause for our orange people today, the Orange Army as they are known, because we could not do any of this without them.
And your feedback is important. So the way I learn, the way I grow, one is by mistakes, but also listening and understanding from you guys. So make sure you guys give us feedback so how we could become better presenters and educators for you guys in the future as well.
So the Pareto principle. So this is, I don't know, show of hands, has anybody not heard of the Pareto principle? We've got a few folks. All right, so the Pareto principle says in business that 80% of your business comes from 20% of your clients. All right, we're going to essentially apply that to our enterprise data platform and see how that translates to how you can optimize and assess your environment. Which button are you pushing?
The enter.
Oh, enter. Sorry.
Yeah, because when you think about technology and we think about optimization, we're using the word optimization today, right? And that can mean many things to many different people. But why are we optimizing? How many people actually had their IT budgets increase next year? A couple people. What percentage was it increased? By a lot.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. I want to come work for him, Ben. Sorry.
I know. Go for it. Because a lot of people probably want to know how you did that, right? Correct. Yeah, but even the budget being increased is important because most people, how many people had their budgets cut? Anybody had them cut? Or most of them are a couple people.
Few, yeah.
And most of them are relatively flat, right? What's happening in technology? We're all data professionals in one way or another. Our data is growing at 23% compounded annual growth rates right now. That's the average across the world. I don't know what your growth rate is, but it probably grew higher or more than your budget grew. And then you think about your business. A lot of these businesses are growing, or your transaction volume is growing as well. And then how are we supposed to innovate with the business? Because the business wants us to innovate with AI, all these great new technologies, but they're not potentially giving us the money to innovate with, but they want us to innovate more as they know that technology is an enabler for the business. So how are we going to manage all these new demands of innovation and building things for the business while minimizing our spend, but then to be able to still support this 20 or 30 years of legacy technology that we have out there today? That's one of the challenges. That's also why we're going to be talking about optimization. So within your organization, there are many different areas that we could optimize in to, I call it, save costs / then we could reallocate that spend to be able to support some of these new technology initiatives so that you guys can innovate without spending money, because technology does cost money. I threw this in there. It's sort of related, sort of not, because I am big into I like the environment, I like hiking, I like biking and so forth, but I own a couple technology companies. So you think about, I'm around technology all the time. Back in the day, a rush job was 1 week. We said, hey, can you get this to us in 1 week? And then all this technology is coming, fax machines, modems. Now we have smartphones. Now we have a lot of other gadgets. We have AI automatically doing lots of stuff for us. And then sort of driving this other thing about immediacy, right? With microwaves, I can't wait 6 minutes for this thing, what's going on? So I think as we are innovating, let's also remember that we also have time, we need to remain balanced, right? So make sure we're balancing what we do and with what time we have. But ultimately, the cost of our designs. So as we are designing the next generation AI platforms, analytical platforms, technology solutions, if you're doing a new cloud migration, et cetera, every decision that you make in there has a cost. And a lot of times we don't think about it because we get so focused on the technology. We're thinking about the newest features that are being released from Microsoft or whatever the platform is. But ultimately, what is the cost of our design, right? When we're building that new application, one of the things that I realized is this. If Angela is building a brand new app and I give her a budget of $1 million, yep, and we just signed it, she gets all excited. She goes and gets a design team, project manager, builds out a project, and we give her a due date of June 30th, right? Sort of
Absolutely.
tight. Can you do it?
Sure, we can do it.
Yes. So we build our team, we design it. How we build that architecture, there's many different ways. How we build it will influence our costs later on. So we start to build. Who we have code our system will determine our cost later on. So we go and build it. I'm ready to deploy it, Angela. What size server should I deploy this on?
The biggest one you got.
Not the smallest?
No, the biggest one you got.
Okay.
I want it all.
Yeah, because we don't want to de-risk. We want to de-risk ourselves. We don't want to deploy it on the smallest. So what do as technologists? We deploy it on the biggest. So we go, and now we're in production. So remember, I gave her $1 million. We just deployed, and now my monthly budget is $20,000 that I'm operating on. So then my first year, before I brought on anybody, grew the business and the data, it's $20,000. Do apps run for 1 month? I have apps that are running for 25 years as some of our clients. And a lot of you guys also have that as well. So what did we just do? We focused on the $1 million of building the app. We didn't focus on the 20 years and what that technology will cost us. And that goes back down to the design, the quality of the code, the data type decisions that we make, all up front. It has that long-term impact and effect. And the other important thing is, why am I even talking about cost, right? And the other challenge is we all talk different languages, and not just from in English versus German versus Dutch, etc. But we all have different backgrounds. How many developers are in here?
You got
A couple
few.
developers. What about infrastructure? A couple infrastructure. What about data engineers, DBAs?
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
A lot of, yeah. Any business people in here?
What?
No business? Yeah, the
There was
business didn't
one.
come to a technology conference? Well, think about this. As data people, I could go have a great data type conversation with Angela, right? Infrastructure people, vCPUs, memory, storage, bandwidth, right? We'll talk that. Developers, I will talk about .NET, libraries, all this other fun stuff. What's the one language we all speak? Money.
Money, that's right.
Money. But most of the time, we don't think about how do we communicate to the business around the cost of technology, et cetera, to get them to prioritize our optimizations. So the reason why I'm talking about this, it's so important also how we communicate to be able to sell what me and Angela are going to talk about in just a second. Many times, financials will help us get the decision green lit for us to get that prioritized, because they are so focused on the product roadmap that they forget that we potentially have some tech debt or optimizations to make in the environment that will actually save hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars over the 5 or 10 years. So we're going to talk about how you guys sell that, where those are at, and so forth. But first thing we want to do is say, well, what level do we optimize at? Many of us, developers, database administrators, we have the classic saying of, let's go optimize the top 10. Angela's going to say, as a developer, she'd say, Ben, can you give me the top 10 worst statements in this database? So I run a query, and I give her that code. And what does she do? She'll go and tune the top statement. And she makes some progress and promotes that in. what did I potentially just do? Maybe I saved 30% because she just optimized the most toughest query in there. But at the same time is, what did I potentially save? And that's a licensing value. So SQL Server, every 2 vCPUs is roughly about $15,000 for Enterprise Edition. So that is what I saved. Now, what about if I'm looking at it from an enterprise perspective? Did you know that a lot of the code runs across the environment, whether or not it's on prod, non-prod, meaning QA, dev, UAT, or there's other processes in your environment, think about auditing and logging. How many of the DBAs have like a DBA database that they deploy out to your server?
Yeah.
Several of us, right? We probably wrote that a while back. You know, I know that I wrote some code in 2004 for a client to capture some perfmon data, exec request data, connection data. That's still running today. And it's funny because that client still talks to us. And I was like, wow, you guys still have this data? And they're like, yes, they're very proud of it. And I'm like, you guys have not archived it or purged it. You probably don't need data back to 2004. So I was like, well, since we have it, I might as well graph it and see this graph that does this. But what did we just do? You know, we just designed a database that goes across all the environments. So one of the quick things as far as the story, we were working with this very large, I call it financial organization, and they're trying to scale this very big platform. And they're like, we do not have any more space and I call it capacity to be able to perform. So we looked at their implementation, not only of that system, but we have technology that looks across the enterprise. We said, well, let's actually just look at what is being used as far as resources. And we noticed that their DBA utility database was #1 on the list. And we're like, wow, your DBA database is using more than your core revenue generating system. And it's because they were capturing exec requests every 5 minutes, and it went back to 2006. So that's billions of records. Then they were capturing all this other data that they thought people might know. And they were even capturing every connection that came in every minute. That's it, guys. #1 is, why do you need this data? And Angela's going to talk a little bit about this later on. But at the same time, is they then are accessing that. And then they didn't tune the indexes for that. They didn't think that people were going to access that data. Then you think about the processes to be able to insert and scan that. It ended up being 45% of their implementation as far as licensing. 500 vCPUs were being attributed to the resources from that one database that they owned that brought no value to the business. So the one thing I always say, if you do have a DBA database, take an hour or 5 next week, quickly go and say, do we have something that deletes data? Do we need this data? How long? And make sure that you quickly index it. And the example is, I could save, if I save 30% because I tuned a process across this environment, 744,000. And we just looked at code from an environment, and one piece of code, which was in a SaaS. Any SaaS companies in here? One? And then do you have a database per client? Yes. Okay. So you're in a very good position. Why? Because if you look at that code runs, and how many databases do you have? Hundreds. Yeah. So maybe hundreds or 1,000. So if you can optimize one piece of code in, so say he has 100 databases, that's 100 times whatever that percent of that code is of that system. And that's how you get very big wins across the enterprise. So one of the first things that we do is we start at the system level, the configuration level. Why? Low risk. It's easy. Very, very quick wins. So you think about data compression. If I enable data compression, I could potentially either get 15% up to 80% compression rates on indexes. Certain SP configure values I could set as well. Different things I assume. So when you think about a database, how much free space do we want to have in that?